internal user testing tips and tales with Penny Sweetser. My name is Alex Peters from Firebench. I'm the community manager there, and I'm really just here to introduce Penny. Penny's the senior designer at 2K Australia. She's worked on Bioshock 2, Medieval 2 Total War, Medieval 2 Kingdoms, and an upcoming 2K title. As well as contributing to the design, she was in charge of the user testing on each of these titles. And developed customised internal user testing processes for each title. She's worked as a game designer for the last 5 years after completing her PhD in game design. She authored a book based on her research in 2007 titled Emergence in Games, and she previously worked as a usability engineer, researcher in usability and user-centred design, and a lecturer in game design. So please welcome Penny. So I should also have mentioned that Penny will be taking some questions at the end of the presentation, and please remember to turn your mobile phones off.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, so as Alex said, I'm Penny Sweetser. I'm a senior designer at 2K Australia. I'm going to talk to you a bit about internal user testing. Just a brief overview. I'm going to give you a bit of more of a background on myself and how I got into games design and user testing. I'm going to tell you what I mean by user testing and also internal user testing. I'm going to go through some of the pros and cons of internal user testing versus outsourcing. Talk you through some of the procedures that we used on Bioshock 2. And if I've got time, I'll talk a bit about an unannounced title and Total War. Also want to talk about some tips for scaling user testing because in terms of time and resources and expertise, getting the team involved, and just a few general tips. Okay, so me, I did a Bachelor of Information Technology majoring in cognitive science, which involved like psychology components and software engineering and some maths and physics, which basically didn't qualify me for much. But I went on to do a PhD in emergence in games and also enjoyment, looking at different ways to incorporate emergent behaviour and gameplay into games, and I also used quite like a heavy enjoyment focus to make sure those elements were going in to improve the player experience. Worked at the UQ Usability Lab, which gave me a good foundation in practical usability testing. I worked at Seeker on Medieval 2 Total War and the Kingdoms expansion, and now I work at 2K Australia. For those of you who don't know, 2K Australia worked on Bioshock and Bioshock 2, jointly with 2K Marin for Bioshock 2 and 2K Boston for Bioshock 1. And I'm currently working on the top secret unannounced title, of course. Okay, so what do I mean by user testing? I mean getting your target audience to playtest your game. I want to make a differentiation here from focus testing. I know a lot of game developers call the process I'm going to talk about focus testing, but focus testing is actually a specific method that involves group testing and then holding focus group discussions. I actually don't like to use this term because I think this is actually a bad approach to evaluating your game or evaluating anything in general, really. I'm going to talk you through the processes that we do use. And why do you conduct user testing? To improve the usability and playability of your game. And in reality, you're not making a AAA game if you're not user testing it. And even if you're not making a AAA game, you should be user testing it to get the most out of your product and your time. So by internal user testing, I'm not just talking about getting your team members to play. I actually mean bringing in consumers and using your own facilities and your own team to run the tests. But you can also be getting your team to play and your friends to play and getting feedback from them. And it's actually a rigorous process of collecting data from the playtest sessions. And it's not just about finding out whether the players like or dislike the game. I think the most important thing you do is actually to build up a mental model, the player's mental model of the game. So if you really sit in on a player's experience and you get them to tell you about it, and you ask them questions, you can actually develop a good understanding of how they're understanding and thinking about your game. And from there you can see if they're learning what you want them to learn, and if they're understanding the game in the way that you think that they should. And that reveals a lot of the issues that you need to address if they're not. But it is also about finding out if they like it or they don't like it, or what they can tell you about it, or what they think is confusing. And the other part is also collecting internal metrics during play. So the game will actually log out like a bunch of data, so how many times they've used a particular weapon, how long they've spent going through a level, where they're getting stuck and things like that. Those metrics can be really useful when examined alongside your qualitative feedback that you're gathering from the players. And the final stage is using the data to improve your game. So you have to synthesize, analyze, and report the results to your team and find out how you can use those results to improve your game. So I just want to talk about some of the pros and cons of doing testing internally versus outsourcing it to an external company. To me, I think the most important thing that you get from doing it internally is you get your team involvement and input from your team, and I think this is just so important. So your team get to actually help define, the processes and the questions that you're asking, and really direct, the feedback that you're getting. Also, they can sit in on the sessions, get the feedback firsthand, as opposed to just reading it secondhand in a report and not really getting the full picture of the player's experience. It can be a lot cheaper to do it internally, so if you're using your own studio, your own facilities. Just to give you a bit of an example here, we got a quote for 2 days of external testing for Bioshock 2, and it was $45,000 US, and that included the time of the person, and renting facilities and renting consoles and PCs and all the equipment that they needed. So doing it ourselves was a lot cheaper. You also get flexibility, so if you're running it in your own studio, you've got all of your team there to support you. You can make last minute changes. You can, there were a few times when I got stuck in a level and I just ran out and grabbed a level designer and I pulled them in and went, get me past this, and they typed in the console command and we got past it. And just, so you can push your test back half an hour if you need to. You can use a different build, those sorts of things. Communication, again, sort of relates back to the first 2 points. If your team is all there and they're involved in the process, it's a lot easier to create a dialogue about it and sort of disseminate the results to everybody. You've got project familiarity, and not just that, you're familiar with the development process and creating games. A lot of the times, if you use an outsourcer, if they don't have actual game development experience themselves, they can be very good at identifying the problems, but they'll make recommendations to you that you can't really use, so you have to put a lot of time into synthesizing that into something that you can directly put into your game. Obviously, if you're taxing your team that is already working on other things, there's going to be time problems. Unless you can hire someone to specifically be in charge of this, oftentimes it just falls to perhaps the designers, and it's always not their priority, and it tends to get pushed down and pushed until later. You might not have the expertise or proven methods to conduct these tests. Ideally you can hire someone to do that, but those people are generally hard to find, and you just might not have the resources to be able to hire someone to manage those processes for you.